Christmas lights twinkled across the city of New York, painting the streets with the glow of holiday cheer. Yet, for Celeste, standing outside the Grand Greystone Hotel, everything felt wrong. The world around her seemed distant, swallowed by a deep ache in her chest. She tugged her coat tighter against the biting December cold, feeling the bitter chill creep under her skin. Her fingers trembled as she clutched a crumpled photograph, the edges worn from years of hope, pain, and unspoken promises. The photograph was of a man, Maximilian Ashford, a man she had once loved, a man who had vanished without a trace 6 years ago. He had promised her forever, and she had believed him. But promises were fragile things. And when Celeste had found out she was pregnant, he was nowhere to be found. "Mommy, I'm cold," a small voice whispered, pulling her from her thoughts. Her 5-year-old son, Ethan, pressed himself against her side, his tiny hand cold in hers. His twin sister, Isabella, was asleep in her arms, her small face pale and drawn from the stress that had consumed their lives for months. Before we continue, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, give us a like, and share with your friends. Also, tell us where you are watching from in the comments to support our growth. Celeste's heart broke for the 100th time in the past few days. Ethan was sick, terribly sick. A rare blood disorder had eaten away at his body, leaving him fragile and weak. The doctors had said that without a bone marrow transplant, he might have only a few months to live, and the only hope was finding his biological father. Celeste had been searching for Maximilian for years, ever since he disappeared the moment she had told him about the pregnancy. She had tried to reach him through every possible way, but each attempt had been met with silence, until today. Today, she was standing outside this hotel, praying that he would be here for the Ashford family's annual Christmas gala. Perhaps, just maybe, he'd be there. "Excuse me, miss," a gruff voice interrupted her thoughts, pulling her back to the cold reality of the world around her. A hotel security guard stood in front of her, his face set in a hard line. "You can't stand here. This is the hotel's private entrance." Celeste's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't have time for this. "Please," she begged, her voice hoarse. "I just need 1 minute. It's about Maximilian Ashford. It's urgent." The guard's eyes narrowed as he cut her off. "I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but Mr. Ashford doesn't have any children. Now, move along before I call the police." The words felt like a slap to Celeste's face. She thrust the photograph forward, hoping for a miracle. "Please, I have proof. We were together 6 years ago. Look, this is us." The guard barely glanced at the photo before tossing it aside, dismissing her plea. "Could be anyone," he muttered. "Mr. Ashford takes pictures with hundreds of people. Now, move along, or I'll have to call the authorities." Celeste's breath caught in her throat as panic surged through her. She was out of options. "My son is dying. Please, just let me talk to him. He needs his father. Stop wasting my time." The guard's words were harsh, his hand grabbing her arm roughly, forcing her to stumble. Ethan started crying, the sound a desperate wail in the freezing night. Isabella woke up, her frightened cries joining her brother's. Celeste's pulse quickened as the chaos swirled around her. "Let go of my mother," Ethan yelled, kicking the guard's leg with all his strength, his small foot landing with a thud. The guard scowled. "You little brat." He raised his hand, about to strike Ethan. Celeste's heart stopped. She threw herself between them, her body taking the blow intended for her son. The sharp sting of the slap sent her sprawling to the ground, still clutching Isabella to her chest. Ethan's terrified screams rang in her ears. "What's going on out here?" A deep voice cut through the chaos, filled with authority. Celeste's eyes blurred with tears, her cheek burning with pain. When she looked up, her heart stopped. There, standing at the entrance of the hotel, was Maximilian Ashford. He was just as she remembered, tall, handsome, and dressed in a sharp tuxedo, his eyes cold as they scanned the scene before him. When his gaze passed over her, there was no recognition, no warmth. "Mr. Ashford," the security guard said quickly, pointing at Celeste. "This woman's been harassing guests, claiming you're the father of her bastards. I was just removing her." "Bastards?" Celeste's voice was raw with fury and grief. She scrambled to her feet, still holding Isabella, and pulled Ethan close to her. "These children are not bastards. They're your children, Maximilian. Your son and daughter." Maximilian's expression didn't change. "I don't know you," he said coldly, dismissing her completely. Celeste's chest tightened. Maximilian, it's me, Celeste. We met at a charity event 6 years ago. We spent the night together. You promised me you'd call. You said you loved me. He didn't flinch. I attend dozens of charity events. I meet hundreds of people. I don't sleep with random women and make promises I don't intend to keep. Her heart shattered, but she pushed forward. Look at them. Ethan has your eyes. Isabella has your smile. They're yours, Maximilian. They're your children. For the first time, Maximilian hesitated, his gaze flickering between the children. Celeste could see the flicker of recognition in his eyes. Ethan, the boy was so similar to Maximilian at that age, even down to the golden brown eyes. Maximilian remained cold. Even if I had slept with you, how do I know I'm the father? You could have been with anyone. The words hit Celeste like a physical blow. She struggled to keep her voice steady. I was a virgin when we met. You were my first, my only. Maximilian pulled out a thick wad of cash and held it out to her dismissively. Here's $500. Take care of your children and stop harassing me. If you show up here again, I'll have you arrested. Celeste stared at the money as it landed at her feet, the cold wind scattering the bills. She wouldn't take it, not like this. Not when her son's life was at stake. I don't want your money, she whispered, voice breaking. I want you to take a DNA test. I want you to help your son. He's dying, Maximilian. He has a rare blood disorder and needs your bone marrow to survive. Please, just take a test. Prove I'm lying if you think I am. But don't let him die because of your pride. For a brief moment, Celeste thought she saw something stir in Maximilian's eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. But it was gone before she could reach for it. Suddenly, a woman's voice called out from inside the hotel, sweet and impatient. Jackson, darling, what's taking so long? The gala is about to start. Celeste froze. The woman, her perfectly manicured nails and golden hair, linked her arm possessively through Maximilian's. A cold sense of finality washed over Celeste as she realized the woman was someone else, someone who belonged to his world now. Who is this? The woman asked, eyeing Celeste with disdain. No one, Maximilian said flatly. Just a beggar. Security is handling it. The woman, elegant and aloof, pulled out her own wallet. A beggar with children. How sad. Jackson, you should give her some money. It's Christmas, after all. Maximilian didn't object. He watched as the woman tossed a $100 bill at Celeste's feet. Celeste's hand clenched into a fist. The rage built inside her, but she didn't have the strength to fight anymore. Not here, not like this. Come on, Ethan. Isabella, we're leaving, she said, voice steady despite the storm within. As she turned away, her heart breaking all over again, Ethan's voice rang out. Mommy, why doesn't Daddy want us? Celeste's eyes blurred with tears. She heard the faintest sound of Maximilian's voice behind her, but it was too late. He was already walking back into the hotel with his fiancée, leaving her and the children in the cold night. Some people forget their promises, baby, Celeste said quietly, her voice breaking. But it's okay. We don't need him. We have each other. Celeste's feet dragged across the icy pavement as she walked home, the weight of her son's illness pressing down on her with every step. She held Ethan's hand tightly, trying to keep him close, even though his small hand felt like a burden as his body sagged with fatigue. Isabella, still weak from her fever, rested quietly in her mother's arms. The streets felt colder now, as if the world itself had decided to turn its back on them. Her heart ached, not just from the physical cold, but from the sting of rejection she'd felt earlier. Maximilian's face was still burned into her mind, cold, distant, detached. The man she had loved had turned away from her, from their children, as though they were nothing more than a bad memory. When they finally reached their small apartment, Celeste could feel the familiar pull of exhaustion, but the empty silence greeted her instead of warmth. The twins were too young to fully understand what had happened, but their innocence only made the hurt sharper. She knew she couldn't hide her pain from them much longer. Later that night, as she tucked them into bed, Ethan's soft voice cut through the quiet. Mommy, will Daddy come back? Celeste froze. Her heart twisted. I don't know, baby. But we're okay, right? We have each other. Ethan nodded, his eyes too tired to argue. But Celeste could see the sadness in his gaze, the same sadness she felt every time she thought of Maximilian. She kissed them both good night, the promise of a better life slipping further from her grasp with each passing moment. She had no answers, no plan, just an overwhelming sense of helplessness. As she sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, her mind kept wandering back to that one moment outside the hotel. The brief flicker of recognition in Maximilian's eyes when he saw Ethan. She had seen it, the way his gaze softened for the briefest moment. She had told herself it meant something, but she couldn't be sure. Did he really care? Or was he just playing along? The harsh ring of her phone shattered her thoughts. Celeste's heart skipped. Maybe it was a call from Maximilian. Perhaps he had changed his mind. She grabbed the phone, her breath caught in her throat. "Hello, Ms. Ross." The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but the name on the caller ID said it all: Montgomery Medical Labs. Her heart raced as she steadied her breath. "Yes, this is Celeste Ross. How can I help you?" "This is Dr. Miller from Montgomery Medical Labs. I'm calling in regard to the DNA samples you submitted earlier today for your son, Ethan." Celeste's heart thudded loudly in her chest. "What about them?" "Mr. Ashford has confirmed that the test results are positive. Ethan is, in fact, his biological son." Celeste's hand shook as she clutched the phone tighter. "What does that mean? Can you help him?" "There is no question, Ms. Ross. We can arrange the transplant immediately. I'll have our team set up an appointment with our head pediatric oncologist for Ethan. We'll get him started on the procedure right away." Her mind reeled. A bone marrow transplant. It was really happening. Maximilian had confirmed it. Her mind couldn't process it. For the first time in weeks, there was a spark of hope. A chance. "Thank you," Celeste whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Thank you so much." She hung up the phone, her hands trembling. Her heart felt too full to contain. Ethan's life was no longer a ticking time bomb. There was a way out, a way to save him. Maximilian had come through. The relief was short-lived, though, because Celeste knew the price of this miracle. She had no illusions about Maximilian's motivations. He had agreed to help because of blood, not love. But at this moment, she couldn't afford to care about anything other than her son's life. She had promised herself she wouldn't beg him again, but now that he had agreed, there was no turning back. She would accept whatever he gave her, and she would make sure Ethan got the care he needed. The next day, Celeste and the twins arrived at Montgomery Medical Center. The facility was nothing like any hospital Celeste had seen before. It looked like a luxury hotel, the kind she had never set foot in, with soft lighting, colorful murals, and warm spaces designed for children. She couldn't help but feel out of place, but it didn't matter. This wasn't about her. It was about Ethan. Dr. Sarah Chun greeted them with a kind smile, explaining the details of the procedure in simple terms. "We're going to get Ethan well," she said with a warmth that made Celeste's heart ache. "This is the best place for him." As they walked into Ethan's private room, Celeste tried to hold back her tears. The room was beautiful, so unlike their old apartment. She knew it was temporary, just as Maximilian's presence in their lives was. But for the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe things might get better. Jackson, she couldn't bring herself to think of him as Maximilian yet, was already there, his assistant by his side. His expression was different from the cold, dismissive look he had given her before. He looked almost sorry. "I've arranged everything," Jackson said quietly, his voice hoarse. "The best care for Ethan. And I'll be here for him, for both of you." Celeste nodded, swallowing her pride. This was the man who had abandoned her and her children. But now he was offering help. Was it for the right reasons? Or was it just a way to ease his conscience? He turned to Ethan, who was nervously clutching Celeste's hand. "How are you feeling, buddy?" Jackson asked, his voice softer now. Ethan looked up, his small face tired but hopeful. "I'm gonna get better, right?" he asked in his tiny voice. Jackson smiled gently, his eyes softening. "Yes, you're going to get better, Ethan. We're going to make sure of it." Celeste couldn't hold back her tears any longer. This wasn't the man she had once known, but maybe, just maybe, he was starting to be the man he should have been all along. But Celeste couldn't forget. She couldn't forget how much he had hurt her, how much he had abandoned them. She wouldn't let herself get too close again. This was about Ethan's future, not her heart. As Jackson left the room to make more arrangements, Celeste sat by her son's side. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. But deep down, she knew the road ahead would be far from easy. Don't forget to support this channel by hitting the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and let us know where you're watching from. The next few days, Celeste found herself in the sterile, impersonal halls of Montgomery Medical Center more often than she cared to admit. But for all its luxury, it wasn't home. It wasn't the tiny apartment they had once struggled to survive in, but it was a far cry from the warmth she had longed for. Her world was still cold and uncertain. Ethan was undergoing tests and treatments, his body fragile as the doctors worked tirelessly to make sure the bone marrow transplant would take. There were moments when Celeste caught herself wondering if all of this, Maximilian's involvement, the hospital's pristine walls, the whirlwind of doctors and nurses, was a dream. It felt like a dream, one that hovered just out of reach. In the meantime, Maximilian's presence had become a constant shadow. He had promised to be there for his children, and he was showing up every day with bags of clothes, toys, and books. He was trying to be a father, trying to make up for the years he had missed. But Celeste could see the walls still around him, the indifference he wore as armor. She couldn't let herself get too close again. She had to remind herself of the man who had left her behind all those years ago. The man who hadn't cared enough to fight for her, for them. Yet every time he looked at Ethan, every time he spoke to Isabella with that soft voice, Celeste's resolve started to crack. "You're not a charity case," Jackson told her one evening as they sat outside Ethan's room, waiting for the final round of tests. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "I don't know how to make that clearer. I want to be a part of their lives. I want to be their father." Celeste's chest tightened. "You've been absent for 6 years, and now you want to waltz in like nothing happened? Like everything's fine." Jackson ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I know I can't fix the past. I can't undo the damage I've caused. But I can be here now. I can be what they need me to be. What you need me to be." She turned away from him, staring out at the flickering lights in the distance. The city stretched before her like an unending ocean of opportunity, and yet she felt like a small, lost boat on it. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But belief had never been easy. "You can't undo the past," she said quietly. "And neither can I. I'm doing this for Ethan. For Isabella. Not because I think you've changed, but because they deserve a chance at a life they weren't supposed to have." Jackson sighed, standing up and pacing slightly. "I never wanted this life for them, Celeste. I never asked for it. But I am asking now. I'm asking you to let me be their father. Let me be a part of their lives." For a moment, everything was silent. She could feel the weight of his words pressing in on her, and it was almost too much to bear. But as the minutes passed, a small part of her, a part she had buried long ago, began to soften. "Why didn't you come back for us?" she asked suddenly, her voice raw. "After everything, why did you just disappear?" Jackson froze, his face contorting with something Celeste couldn't read. Then, slowly, he sat down beside her. "You want the truth?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what you would ask of me, afraid of what it would mean for my life. My grandmother, she told me you were after my money. She made me believe you were just a gold digger. And I let her manipulate me. I let her convince me that you weren't worth the fight." Celeste's heart skipped a beat. "So, you just listened to her?" "I didn't know what else to do," he admitted. "I was young, naive, and she held all the power. I let her steer me, and I regret it every single day." Celeste didn't know what to say. The truth, raw and painful, hung between them like a heavy fog. She had been right all along to distrust him, but somehow hearing him admit it, it didn't make her feel better. It just made her feel empty. "I should have fought for you," Jackson continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have trusted you, but I didn't. And now I'm paying the price. We're all paying the price." She closed her eyes, willing away the tears that had started to form. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Jackson. I don't know if I can trust you again." "I don't expect you to," he said quietly. "But I'm here, and I'll prove it to you every day if I have to." The words hung in the air between them, and Celeste felt an unfamiliar tension in her chest. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Or maybe it was just another illusion, one that would shatter the moment she allowed herself to believe in it. The next few days were a whirlwind of tests, paperwork, and medical procedures. Celeste barely had time to process anything as she juggled the overwhelming emotions that came with having Maximilian back in their lives, even if only for Ethan's sake. But the strain was starting to show. The media frenzy had barely died down. Reporters camped outside the hospital, photographers snatched photos of her in the hallways, and strangers confronted her in the cafeteria, calling her names. The harassment was relentless. "Mommy, why are people saying mean things about you?" Isabella asked one afternoon, her small face full of confusion. Celeste smiled weakly. "Because, baby," Some people don't understand us. But we're strong, and we'll get through this. But it wasn't just the media. Maximilian's world was beginning to encroach on theirs. And every time Celeste looked at him, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was still hiding something. Something important. The days at Montgomery Medical Center were becoming unclear. The rooms, sterile and meticulously designed, no longer felt like a refuge. They had become a prison, one where the bright lights, the endless medical procedures, and the scrutinizing eyes of the media kept Celeste on edge. But even amidst the chaos, there was a flicker of hope. Ethan's recovery was progressing, slowly but surely. Still, the hospital had become a battleground in its own way. Maximilian's presence was constant, but so was the weight of everything he had brought with him. The press, the promises, and the underlying tension between them. It was all too much to process. Celeste was doing her best to stay focused on Ethan's health, to keep her emotions in check for the sake of the twins. They deserved a chance at something better, something stable. But every time she saw Maximilian, she felt like her old wounds were being scraped open, raw and bleeding once more. And then there was Victoria Montgomery, the woman who had tried to destroy everything. Victoria's visits to the hospital were frequent, and each time, Celeste could feel the cold disdain emanating from her. The older woman had made it clear she did not approve of her son's actions, of his newfound responsibility as a father. It was clear Victoria would never accept Celeste or her children. Not in this life, not in any life. One evening, after a particularly exhausting round of tests, Celeste found herself standing at the large window of Ethan's hospital room, watching the city skyline. The lights of New York seemed so far away, as if they were on another planet. She leaned her forehead against the cool glass, her heart heavy with the weight of everything that had transpired. Suddenly, the sound of the door opening behind her made her stiffen. "Celeste," came Maximilian's voice, low and unsure. "Can we talk?" She didn't turn around. She couldn't. "We've talked enough," she replied quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've done what you needed to do. Ethan's getting better. I should be grateful for that, and I am. But I don't think I can keep doing this with you." Maximilian was silent for a moment, and Celeste could hear the weight of his steps as he approached her. "I know it's not enough. I know I've failed you. But I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because of guilt. I'm doing it because I care about Ethan. I care about you." Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to feel the pull of his words. He had hurt her too much already. "No, Jackson," she said, her voice hard now. "I'm doing this because Ethan needs you. He doesn't need your empty promises, your regrets, or your guilt. He needs you now, for as long as he has left. And when this is over, when he's better, we'll go back to our lives. You go back to your world, and I'll go back to mine." She turned to face him then, her eyes full of exhaustion and something else. "You can't undo the years you missed. You can't fix everything with a few good gestures. This, whatever this is, it's temporary. And I won't let my children be your mistake." Maximilian flinched at her words, his face hardening. "So that's it. You're giving up? On us?" Celeste's chest tightened. "There is no us, Jackson. There never was. Not for 6 years. Not until you decided to show up with a blood test and a promise." The silence between them was thick, and for a moment, Celeste thought he might walk away. But he didn't. Instead, he took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Not again. I'll be here for Ethan. And when he's well, I'll be here for you, too, if you'll let me." Celeste didn't respond immediately. She just stood there, staring at him. The pain in his eyes was real. She could see it now. His guilt, his regret, his fear. It was so raw and unguarded, it almost made her believe him. But she couldn't let herself. "I don't want to be the reason you ruin your life," Celeste finally whispered. "I don't want to be the reason you destroy everything. You have a life, a future. Don't give that up for us." Maximilian's jaw tightened, and he shook his head slowly. "You don't get it, do you? I'm done letting other people control my life. My future, it's with you and the kids. That's where I belong now." Celeste wanted to laugh bitterly. He was still the same man who had once walked away when she needed him most. "You think you can just walk back into our lives, and everything will magically fix itself?" she asked, her voice trembling with frustration. "You can't. We're not a charity case for you to fix. You don't owe us anything." Maximilian reached out, his hand gently touching her arm. "I'm not here to fix you, Celeste. I'm here to be with you. I'm here because I don't want to make the same mistake again. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I have to try." Tears welled up in Celeste's eyes, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. The wall she had built around her heart had started to crumble, piece by piece, as she stood there, staring at the man who had once broken her so completely. But there was something in his eyes now, something that made her believe he was finally ready to fight for them, finally ready to make things right. "I don't want to hope again," she said, her voice breaking. "But maybe it's worth trying." Maximilian's face softened as he gently cupped her face in his hands. "I'll show you, Celeste. I'll show you every day how much I mean it." And for the first time in a long time, Celeste allowed herself to believe. If you have followed our story to this point, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. We will appreciate it if you tell us what you think about this story. It had been weeks since Maximilian had stepped into their lives. Weeks since he had made the promises that had slowly begun to feel like more than just words. Celeste hadn't allowed herself to hope for a future with him, not completely. But things were changing. Slowly, imperceptibly. Ethan's recovery was moving in the right direction, with each day bringing small victories. His blood counts were rising, the transplant had taken, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic. But despite the good news, Celeste couldn't help but feel a sense of dread hanging over her. She knew all too well that hope could be a dangerous thing, that when you finally let your guard down, you were most vulnerable to the sting of disappointment. Still, things were better. Maximilian's involvement had become a lifeline, not just for Ethan, but for all of them. He was present, consistent, and most importantly, he was showing up. Every day, not with empty promises, but with action. His love for the children was undeniable, and he was fighting hard to prove to Celeste that he was here to stay. But even with all the progress, even with the foundation of their new life beginning to take shape, Celeste knew there was one hurdle left to clear: the reality of Maximilian's world. Victoria Montgomery hadn't backed down. If anything, her disdain for Celeste and her children had only deepened, and her constant presence in their lives was a reminder of the world Celeste didn't belong to. A world that would never accept her, never accept Ethan and Isabella. Maximilian had made it clear he was done with his grandmother's manipulation. He'd walked away from the engagement with Sophia, and he'd made his stance clear in front of the board of Montgomery Industries. Victoria had been forced to step down as CEO, and Jackson now held the reins of the company, with plans to reshape it into something that aligned with his new values. But that wasn't the life Celeste wanted. She couldn't live in that world, where she was still the outsider, still the one who didn't belong. She loved Maximilian, but she loved herself more. And that meant protecting her children from the kind of world that had tried to tear them apart before. "Celeste," Maximilian said one evening as they sat in his penthouse, the glow of the city lights casting long shadows across the room. "We've been through hell, haven't we?" Celeste glanced at him, her heart heavy. "Yeah, we have." He reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. "I'm not asking for anything, Celeste. I'm not asking you to forgive me for everything I've done. I know it's not that simple." She squeezed his hand, her throat tight. "It's not. I know," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I need you to know this. I'm not going anywhere. You and the kids, you're my family now. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you. You don't have to fight this alone anymore." Celeste looked down at their intertwined hands, the weight of his words settling in her chest. It was all so complicated. The past, the pain, the secrets. Everything they had both buried, only to have it all come rushing back in these moments of vulnerability. But for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She didn't feel like she was drowning in the weight of it all. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. "I'm not asking you to give up your world," Celeste said softly, looking up at him. "But I'm not going to live in it. Not like this. I can't." He nodded, understanding. "You don't have to. We'll make a new world. Together. One where we can be a family without all the baggage of the past." Celeste looked at him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. But there was none. His gaze was steady, unwavering. For the first time, Celeste believed him. Really believed him. Maximilian smiled, his hand brushing her cheek. "I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. But I'm here now. I'm here for good." And for the first time in years, Celeste felt the heavy burden of doubt begin to lift. It wasn't easy, and it wouldn't be without its challenges, but for once, she didn't feel alone. The next day, as the family gathered for dinner, The room seemed to hum with a new energy. There was an ease between them that hadn't been there before, a shared understanding that they were no longer just surviving. They were living. And that was enough. As they sat around the table, laughing, the sound of their voices filling the penthouse, Celeste watched her children with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in so long. Ethan, still fragile but full of life, and Isabella, her golden brown eyes shining with hope, were the light of her world. And Maximilian, now standing beside her, not just as their father, but as her partner, was the beginning of something new. "I'm proud of you, Celeste," Maximilian said quietly, leaning in to kiss her temple. Celeste smiled softly, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm proud of you too." In that moment, everything felt right. Everything felt like it had finally come full circle. The next morning, they went to the hospital together. Ethan was stronger now, his blood count stable, and Dr. Chun was optimistic about his full recovery. But it wasn't just the physical healing that had begun, it was the emotional healing, too. As the days passed, Maximilian continued to prove himself. He was there for Ethan, there for Isabella, and most importantly, there for Celeste. No longer the distant, cold figure from her past, but someone who was finally willing to fight for them. And as they all gathered together that Christmas, exactly 1 year after Celeste had stood outside the Montgomery Hotel, praying for a miracle, Celeste knew she had found her happy ending. Not a perfect ending, not a flawless one, but the one she deserved, the one they all deserved. As the snow fell softly outside, Celeste stood with Maximilian and their children in the warmth of their new home. What had once felt impossible, building a family amidst years of heartache, loss, and misunderstanding, was now a reality. For the first time, she truly understood what it meant to not just survive, but to live. And not just to live, but to thrive. The journey wasn't easy. In fact, it was filled with setbacks, mistakes, and moments of doubt. But through it all, one thing remained clear. Celeste's love for her children and her determination to fight for them never wavered. The struggles they faced, Ethan's illness, the fight for paternity, the overwhelming presence of the media, and the harshness of Maximilian's world, could have torn them apart. But instead, they found a way to rebuild, brick by brick, not just their lives, but their relationship. Maximilian's promises weren't just words. They became actions. And Celeste, though cautious and protective of her heart, learned that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. She learned that forgiveness wasn't just for the other person, but for herself too. It was a lesson in healing and in understanding that love, even when tested, could grow stronger if nurtured with patience and trust. Forgiveness takes courage. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't forgiving someone else, it's forgiving ourselves. Maximilian's journey wasn't just about making amends with Celeste, but making peace with the choices he had made. Forgiveness isn't easy, but it is essential for healing and moving forward. Hope is powerful. Celeste's faith never wavered, even when the road seemed impossible. No matter how dark things got, she kept going for her children. Hope is what keeps us pushing forward, even when the world seems to be against us. Family is what you make of it. It's not about the blood that runs through your veins. It's about the love, loyalty, and the effort you put into building connections. Celeste's family was born out of pain, but it grew stronger with love, commitment, and resilience. Never give up on what matters. Maximilian's choice to fight for his children, despite everything he stood to lose, showed the power of choosing what's truly important. It's never too late to do the right thing and change your path. Strength is found in vulnerability. Celeste learned that being vulnerable didn't mean being weak. It meant opening up to trust and to healing, even when the fear of being hurt again was overwhelming. True strength comes from allowing ourselves to feel, to be open to growth, and to move forward despite past hurts. The story reflects a central theme of second chances, not just for love or relationships, but for personal growth, redemption, and family. Even when the world feels against you, even when everything seems broken, you can rebuild stronger and better than before. The ability to forgive, to give others, and yourself another chance, is the cornerstone of true healing. No matter how hard life gets, giving up is never an option. There is always a way through the darkness, always a path to healing, no matter how impossible it seems. Whether it's a relationship that needs mending, a personal dream that's on the brink of being lost, or a challenge that feels insurmountable, take a deep breath, dig in your heels, and keep going. The strength you need is already inside of you. If you're facing a tough time right now, remember this: you are not alone. Keep going. Take it one day at a time. It may not seem like it now, but you're closer to your breakthrough than you think. And just like Celeste, you have the strength to overcome the hardest battles. No matter what challenges come your way, don't give up. Keep your heart open, keep your faith strong, and trust that everything you need will come when the time is right. Thank you so much for following along with this journey. If you were moved by Celeste and Maximilian's story, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Let us know where you're watching from, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. What did you take away from it? Your feedback means so much to us, and it helps us create more content that resonates with you. Stay hopeful, stay strong, and remember, never stop believing in the power of second chances.